Approaching Home, which covers Genesis 24, 61 to 63. Approaching Home. Somebody read that.
That day, a large entourage left for Canaan. Abraham's servant, other servants, Rebekah, and several maids accompanying her. Abraham's trusted servant led the way as Rebekah and her maids followed, riding on camels. At the very time the servant and his entourage were approaching home, Isaac was out for an evening walk, meditating. The timing of his walk was not by accident, but say that for me. Providential.
I'm sorry.
Directed by God.
Oh, provincial.
Tongue twister for me. Directed by God, he was about to meet his wife.
Amen.
All right. He was about to meet his wife. Can you imagine now the anxiety? Because, by the way, after all this has happened, and however long it took for this journey to get done, after everything is taking place, can you imagine what it would have been like if Isaac had said, oh, no, send her back.
Wow.
Let's move forward. All right. The next section, meeting Isaac. I get a reader for that. Thank you, Mother.
Rebecca, too, was on the lookout and full of anticipation. This was foreign territory to her. Of course, she may have had no idea how far they still had to go. But at some point, she lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she lifted off the camel. She lighted off the camel. She got off her camel because she had already asked Abraham's servant who the man walking in the field towards them was. Now, knowing that this was her anticipated husband, she properly veiled herself in preparation for their meeting. The moment for which God had prepared her was here, and the veiling was done according to normal customs and expectation of the actual marriage. Even this simple act reveals high standards of purity in Rebecca.
In other words, just because God put this thing together didn't mean you could just kind of act any old kind of way. All right? She put herself in a position to present herself to him in a way that would be acceptable. Again, that's something that we have a difficult time because, see, we believe anybody's acceptable just because they're human beings. That's not the case when you're talking about how we are to present ourselves. This is why even fashion, a lot of times we think, I'm free to, adorn myself fashion because after all, you can't judge me, can't judge a book by its cover. But God said we're supposed to reflect that which makes us a peculiar people, a holy nation, a nation called out in fellowship with him. And when we just do things any old way, we have no regard for godliness and how we present ourselves to other people. So we need to be careful about that. So it's not always just one particular thing. It's literally how we publicly present ourselves. I remember years ago, one of my dear friends who's a missionary told me, he said, I personally don't have issues with all tattoos. He said, now some are just crass and have no business being, and they shouldn't be, all right? Especially when you give them names, tramp stamp, stuff like that. I mean, that just kind of tells you, that's just nasty anyway. Yes, but he said that if you want to be a missionary, there are certain countries around the world, they won't accept you. They won't accept you because they are still dealing with their pagan beliefs, et cetera, et cetera. He said, if you want to be a missionary, then you have to be willing to deny doing that kind of stuff. You may feel I have the freedom to do it, yeah, but you won't be accepted there. Now, you think that cameras were the same way. There was a time where certain tribes around the world, if you took a photograph of people, they thought you captured their souls and believed that was a form of witchcraft.
Really?
You see what I'm saying? So I've got to be willing, as Paul was, to deny certain aspects of myself that might be considered offensive, not because they are true, but they become a hindrance to me being able to reach those people. You see what I'm saying? This is why in some cases we have the extreme, the idea of judging somebody by the way they dress when they come to morning service. We need to be careful about that. by the same token, when we go to serve, say down at the mission, and the mission will tell you, ladies, wear skirts, don't wear tight clothes, don't wear, men and women don't wear fancy jewelry, don't wear things that have, things on them that could be considered provocative or just why? Because those things could be a distraction and a hindrance to the people you're going to minister to.
Amen.
We need to be willing to be a clean slate where we go. And I know this is about marriage, but just in ministry in general, we need to be willing to be a clean slate so that God can use us in the place where he put us. Some things people will grow to, and some things people will not. Elizabeth Elliot's husband, they went to a tribe that killed her husband,
Yeah.
and she still went back because she believed that God needed her to go back.
Right.
How many of y'all could go somewhere and minister to some people that killed your family?
Mm.
All right. Now I say how many of you could. That's in your strength. But when God tells you to go,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
then you go. Why? Because that's his will.
Amen.
And if you save your life, you'll lose it. But if you lose your life for his sake and the gospel, then you save it. Beginning of relationships. The servant immediately gave a detailed account of his journey to his master's son. It would have been interesting to hear the account of all the things he had done. Apparently, Rebekah stood by quietly and listened once again, hearing how God had so clearly and specifically answered prayer concerning her. The author then records 4 steps in Isaac and Rebekah's relationship. First, Isaac takes Rebekah to his mother Sarah's tent. She died some time back.
Mm-hmm.
Second, she officially became his wife. In other words, they didn't have justice of the peace.
Mm-hmm.
They may have had some kind of celebration, but taking her to this place and making that declaration, she is his wife. All right?
Mm-hmm.
That more than likely means that they have relations. All right? Then, third, he loved her. And fourth, she was comforted in his lingering sorrow following his mother's death. So he put all of those things in an order that made it both official and made it practical to both Rebekah and himself that now we're going to be married. All right? Rebekah had now taken Sarah's place in the line of Abram's descendants and the ultimate fulfillment of Abraham's covenant in the coming Messiah. So think about that. Without even knowing that, she is now in the line of that great nation, the father of many nations. And this is just through one son. So, God's got to do a whole lot of blessing. There's got to be a whole lot of, procreating for these many nations to come. I have here in my book, it says, we cannot but be amazed at the working of the sovereignty and the providence of God throughout this entire incident. Everything that was done and said was by the directing hand of God. We see his faithfulness to his people and his promises, and it is the same faithfulness he exercised towards us today. We see his guidance of individuals who wanted his will more than anything else, and the same guidance is available to us. We see his responses and rewards to those who want more than anything else to be in his will. Both human responsibility and God's providence are clear in this historic incident. And it reminds us that we must be diligent about our obedience to him, knowing that he will be faithful to help us. And I think that this story gets little, credit. They talk about, love at first sight. He immediately takes from his arms and takes her away. But God orchestrated, guided, and directed this process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that we need to look at more than anything. Because human circumstance, we can always feel good about what feels good, right?
Yep.
But what about what doesn't? What about what's not comfortable or convenient? What about seems to go against the grain of the culture? And yet we know this is where God is directing us. Have you ever started out in one path and got halfway down the path and realized God has me going somewhere and it's in this direction, but the ultimate end that I thought it is not what God has?
Yep.
Who thought there'd be abiding faith? No sense of raising your hand because we didn't. Who thought there'd be, the things in your life over the years where God has done things in your life that if you had even said, I'm going to plan certain things, this wouldn't have even been on my list. And then there are other things that God let happen, but it was so much longer, so much later than when you originally thought about it. You'd even kind of forgot about it. And then one day you realize, you know what? I asked God for this a long time ago. He was guiding you, but you were busy doing what he wanted you to do, and he got you there. I wonder how many things we've lost or missed out because we weren't faithful, weren't obedient, and don't even know it. Could be interesting. I don't think I want to find that out. I think I'll just be happy and stick with the Lord. Any thoughts or observations about this arranged marriage?
I was thinking about the part where you were saying, it's kind of like the decent and in order.
Mm-hmm.
She, veiled herself
Mm-hmm.
and that. And you were talking about when we go to the other church to serve.
Mm-hmm.
I remember as a union steward, our logo would go to different places that had children,
Mm-hmm.
to talk to them. And there were things that the union had to offer, to help those particular places, but they would be places that maybe the children, say boys and girls home, places like that.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the union reps would come in so dressed up that it looked like looked like you was going to a party, and it was kind of like walking in and looking on like this,
Mm-hmm.
and they would tell us, you're going to a place to help or to let people know that you're available. Why you in looking like you're going to a nightclub or like you can't be touched? And that was something I thought about,
Mhm.
as far as, like decent and in
Mhm.
order. When you're going in a particular situation, you don't go there like you're somebody that's up here looking down, and
Mhm.
you're lucky to, or as they say, lucky, you're blessed to have me in your presence.
But see, you identified something that most people don't think way because it never occurred to them that that would be looked at as an issue. That's something that you learn because most people think we're going to do something. I'm going to go dressed in my best, not necessarily thinking that this is going to be an impediment. There are some people who might do it to be snobby. Some people might not even get that. And so that's why it's incumbent upon us who have that wisdom and experience to share things like that so that we're cognizant of it. This young lady has been taught well by her family. All right? So that even though Isaac, is 65 or more years away from this culture that he was raised, Abraham hasn't changed his ways of being decent and in order. So she realizes, look, I'm going to be a young woman who's going to go and present myself. And we as God's people need to realize that decent and in order may not always be what we're accustomed to, but it is about considering where we're going and what we're doing. That's why I gave the missionary story about wearing tattoos and the people using cameras, because, if we're serving God, it's not about how I get to express myself. Does your water glass tell you, drink me a certain way? Only what you choose, and then you give it away, you pour it out, you consume it yourself. We're God's vessels. And it's our God to be equipped and filled and dispensed and disseminated according to his will. And that means looking to the ways of what we think. If and I'm going to say this and we're going to close. If I know if I know I'm trying to invite somebody I know who is a Orthodox Jewish person to my church and want to witness to them about Jesus Christ, I don't invite them on the day that I know we're going to have a barbecue. Unless, of course, in that barbecue, I'm going to have chicken, and I'm not going to offer, my Jewish friend who still, even if he's not a practicing Orthodox Jew, still believes that Jewishness means, you don't eat pork and things like that, just because it's part of their ritual history. I'm not going to offer him a ham sandwich. You know, I guess some tuna salad. You know, I'm gonna do something because I don't want something to get in between me and the message.
Amen. Uh-huh.
That's what Paul was talking about in his ministry, and we need to be careful. And that's the very thing that Mother Madison means. And so it's just important. It crosses over into so many different aspects of life. You know, when you go to somebody's house and they say, "Make yourself at home," don't make yourself at home. Don't take off your shoes and put your feet up on the furniture and, you know, go in and, you know, pull out a bunch of glasses and then decide I'm just going to drink straight